Hello, Devlin Bishop here with you, and welcome to another edition of Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. And I'm happy to be back. I'm really enjoying this, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. I've been getting some really great feedback, and I love comments. I just absolutely adore them, and they just help me get better and better. Some people have said they've definitely heard that I've been building my confidence over the last little while, and that's great. I'm glad. I really love the people who say that my speaking voice, I'm actually got a good radio speaking voice. That really surprises me, but I'm happy to hear that because, I love doing this, and I'd hate to think that I sounded like, really grating on people's nerves. Of course, that's what I hear when I listen to it, but I'm glad you guys tell me that I have a good radio voice and almost soothing. Maybe I can host some light, cool jazz sometime. Okay, that's just not my thing. But anyhow, thank you for all the comments. I love, one person said that they love that I'm honest, that I'm real, even though I might sometimes say things that aren't of the status quo, and that they don't always necessarily agree to me, that I stick to what I want to say, and that's it. And that's one thing I promised myself when I did this show, that I was going to stay true to myself and not just try to be say what people want to hear. I'm just going to speak right from the heart. And that's a great way to start this because for many of you regular listeners, you know that I'm coming out of a dark period. I was recently let go from Target. Everybody who worked at Target was let go. And I haven't talked much about it. I'm going to be unemployed very soon. Actually, by the time you listen to this, I will be unemployed. And to be honest with you, that has its own dimension. But yeah, it took me to some dark places. And I wasn't going to actually talk about Target for a while. But then I realized that when I dropped this episode, it would be literally the day after Target closed. And I decided, you know what? Let's put some perspective on it right now. Now, I'm not going to talk about the dark stuff. I'm not going to talk about, just the bad stuff that transpired because of it. Because to be honest with you, I was only there for 2 years. I helped build the store with my awesome team. And to be honest with you, those 2 years brought more happiness to me than sadness. So because I want to kind of close the chapter on this, and I feel that there's probably lots of other people that listen to this, because I know a lot of my coworkers say they listen to me, I felt that, you know what, let's get it out of the way. Let's talk about Target. Let's concentrate on the positive and close this chapter with a nice, good feeling. And I'll deal with all the dark stuff on my own personal time. If I feel the need to talk about it in the future, I will, but it's just not my style. Not to mention, I don't think it'd make good radio, because I think it would just be, So let's concentrate on the positive. I worked there for 2 years, and I was part of price accuracy, and I met a phenomenal team that, I don't know, I've never been in retail before. Before that, I was 26 years in a printing company, and I had never done retail, so I got to see pretty much the whole thing, right? From building the store up from the ground, meeting new people from all walks of life, all different ages, all different cultures. And to be honest with you, it was just an amazing experience. Target, when they first started, was just almost unbelievable, and it took me a long time to want to drink the Kool-Aid, to be honest with you. It just seemed like too perfect in some ways, and I'm not a negative person per se, but I was always looking for the dark sides. They would eventually show up, but still, to the end, there was still a lot more good than that. The best thing that I got, well, not the best thing, I'll save the best for last, but one of the things I come from it is I have retail skills now. As I said, I worked in a printing company, never been in retail, so I've now got retail skills, and even though my job was in price accuracy, they cross-trained me in everything from doing cash to back room to pushing on the floor, presentation. I did a little bit of everything, and I plan to put all of that on my resume because I have sampled quite a lot of it. And I was looking for retail after my last job ended, but now I actually have some skills to put on my resume, and overall I actually really enjoyed it. I really enjoy being on the floor, and I love those moments when you get to help a guest and you help them find something that they've been looking for, or you find something that's just amazingly priced for them. And for me, that was just a great feeling. Yeah, there's some negative aspects of it, but not every guest is peaches and cream, but but for the most part, I really enjoyed my experience, and I look forward to seeing if I can continue in that road. So that's where I'm primarily going to look. I'm going to take a little bit of time off, but not a lot, maybe a few weeks to just process things. And then I'm going to look in that direction again, because I think it was for me. And although it was rough at times, I think the good outweighed the bad. I don't want to sound like a materialistic person, but I got a lot of stuff from Target. Being in price accuracy, I always saw the sales, I always saw the clearance prices, I always knew when something was really cheap, and I got lots of great stuff from them. I always say I'm not a materialistic person, but come on, I collect DVDs and Blu-rays and toys, so that kind of gives me kind of almost a hoarding personality. I don't, have stuff all over the place where it's just like a mess, but I like to shop. I'm a shopper at heart, and I picked up a lot of great stuff from stuff I needed, like plates or like a great little personal speaker, to stuff I really didn't need, honestly, like my giant Darth Vader to stand next to my voice-activated R2-D2. That was definitely a want and not a need. But you know what? I was working at the time. It's not like I go into debt for this stuff. My motto is if I can't afford it, then I'm not getting it. So, as far as I'm not going in debt, I think it was good. So I got a lot of great stuff. And as I said, I don't want to think I'm all about, materialistic things. But, I can't deny I did a lot of good shopping. Oh, I forgot. I got a great gift from Heather Curdo. Got me my Liza Minnelli scarf. We can't forget that. And if you want to talk about real materialism things, a friend of mine, Damien, snuck me out a few pieces that I probably shouldn't have in my apartment. Some advertising stuff, but we will not go into details. I do not want to incriminate him or me. So we will move along, but they look great in my apartment, and if he's listening, thank you. Another great thing that I got from Target was they had a volunteering plan. And it's too bad more people didn't utilize this, because I always wanted to volunteer, but, due to whether you want to call it laziness or just, I just was, stupid, like I don't know where to go do this. They set up some volunteering things, and I went on a couple of them, and I'm so glad I did, because this is something I've always wanted to do. I only got to go out a couple of times, but the times that I did were absolutely amazing and made me cherish what I had. I volunteered at a food separating area for the Salvation Army, and basically that's where, people, stores and stuff donate food, and you separate it, and you put it in like tomato sauces or toiletries, and then you get it in boxes, and then when they put it out for people to take at the the store that they have, it's all organized so people know these are the soups, these are your cereals, stuff like that. And most of the times the people who donated them took good care at sending them. Other times it was just amazing what people would do just to get like a write-off or something for their taxes, in boxes where mice chewed them up, and you'd have to go through and find stuff that was usable and stuff. And it was actually, rewarding, but at the same time it was a little saddened because of the fact that, I just can't believe some of the stuff people donated. I remember there were some young girls there that were just like, ew, gross, and all this stuff. And some of the people we volunteered with were people that used these services, and I kind of told them, you shouldn't really react like that. Yes, you're right, it is absolutely gross. But just be thankful that you do not have to use this service, that when you go home, your parents or you yourself, have a nice, refrigerator filled with food and cupboards filled with food, that you don't have to look at dented tins or see which juice boxes are okay to have because, a mouse didn't chew through it. And I just reminded them. And, you should not, make light of that. I also got a chance to work at a soup kitchen. And we actually got to not only help prepare the food, but we served the food to people who need it. And that's not easy to do because you're coming face to face with, people down on their luck, homeless, whatever you want to say. But, I actually felt good doing it because it was just nice. Not everybody was, happy. Not everybody was nice because they're going through hard times. But the ones that were, they were just so thankful for you donating your time, which I thought was quite nice. But we thought we didn't have that many people, and then, after the day we had served and thought so many people came in, and they said, you should come on one of our busiest days. This was actually a slow day, and that just kind of hits you at home because of just the sheer amount of people we served. But they said that, it was a check week, and that means that, some families had enough to buy their own groceries. And it's sad to say, but some were off on benders, for alcohol or drugs or stuff. And they would start showing up again once the money wore out. But really, it opened my eyes, and when I got home that night, I just was blessed that, I was coming home to Mike, and he had some food on the table for me, and, we take things for granted, so Target gave me that opportunity to do that, and it's something I'd like to do again in the future, except I'm going to have to move my own ass to do it, so hopefully I get inspired to do it, and I recommend it for anyone. I think I'm a pretty good judge of character. And I really do think I am. But this really taught me a lot about people. And I think this is a good thing. Just how people are. I got to see how management works, and the good management and the bad management, and how people are, the first to abandon ship, or the first to, basically just turn their backs on you, and the people who stayed to the end. And everybody had their own reasons, and I don't judge them for that, but it really makes me get to know people even better. People who I know I can trust now, people who I might question a little bit, and I think that's always a good thing. For the most part, most of the people I came across with were incredible, and to be honest with you, that's the thing that is the best thing that I got from Target, is I have met wonderful people, and they will be in many different phases in my life, as in, well, let's just face it. Some of these people I'll never see again. Once I say my goodbyes to them, even if I had a chance to say goodbye from them, that's going to be it. I'll be moving on, they'll be moving on, we won't see each other again, which is sad, but I know it's a part of life. Some will become Facebook friends, social media. I'll hear from them, little likes, comments, pokes. Yes, I still poke. I'm one of the old school pokers. And basically, that's fine. You still get a slice of their life a little bit. They're still there. There's another group of people that will be people I see once in a while. either bumping into them in the street and maybe chatting with them for a while, or maybe just, getting together, for a meal or coffee or a chat. And that's good, as long as I'm still part of their life once in a while. And these people were amazing. I'm not going to sit here and name names, but if you meant something to me, because I'm not afraid to tell people how much they mean to me. And then, of course, there's a handful of people that will remain special to me, and I will stay in their life as much as I possibly can. I can think of, a couple that I hold dearly in my heart, and they will stay with me, I'm quite certain. Or I'm going to certainly do all I can to make them stay with me, and I believe they will also make the attempt, and I think if you both make the attempt, that makes it a good thing. And as I said, I'm not going to name names, but if you're listening to this right now, and when I mention these couple people and your heart's beating a little faster right now, or you've remembered something I've said to you recently, then you know that you were one of those people. I wish everybody who was at Target all the best. I'm even going to wish the people that I didn't like and the ones that hurt me all the best too, because I really want to leave this experience without sour grapes, and I just want to walk away being a stronger person, ready for my next adventures, and not holding grudges or any kind of bad feelings, because I don't need that. I've dealt with that with my dark side. It's taken me to really bad places, but I'm now past that, moving on, and I think we all need to do that. And I thank you. If you are one of my former Target members and worked with me, I thank you for the time we had. And whether what friend you become in the future, it was an amazing time no matter what. And I hold the memories dearly, the laughs, the tears, whatever they were. Just thank you for being a part of it, and I wish you all the best. And for those of you who were fans of the actual store, I was too. Sorry we lost it, but hopefully you can find something else to replace it. Anyhow, that's enough Target talk. I've given them way too much of my time. We're going to talk some TV and some music coming up next. We're going to take a short break so I can find a Kleenex and wipe my final tears for Target. The TV show Glee. Just saying the name. Some people love it. Some people hated it. In fact, I think Glee, for everybody who loved it, there was probably 2 or 3 people that hated it. It was a show that just... it was your thing, or it wasn't. I absolutely was a fan of the show. I'm currently in the middle of season 4, but it recently came to an end. And it's too bad, but everything has its time. And since it was set in a high school shows seem to have to wrap up a little earlier, because once they start leaving high school, it's harder for the characters to build. But it's leaving with 121 episodes, and in that 121 episodes, 728 musical performances. Now, whether you loved it or hated it, that's up to you. The show got great ratings at the beginning and started to peter off as seasons go. And although it never got the ratings of a Walking Dead or a Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones, I personally think Glee will have more ramifications in the world. It will leave us with more than any of those other shows did. Because Glee wasn't just a pop culture thing. It wasn't just an isolated moment in time. I literally think it changed the world. And you might think I'm crazy, but I think... well, I'm going to try to prove that I'm not crazy. But before we get to that, let's take a look at some of the history of Glee. It debuted on May 19th, 2009, and it became an instant hit. It was created by Ryan Murphy, Brad Falchuk, and Ian Brennan. And originally, they were talking about making it a movie. I personally think it was inspired by High School Musical, but they wanted to make it a film, and then two of the members said, you know what, why don't we try it as a TV show? It was decided early on that not only would they have musical performances in it, but instead of just top 40 stuff that was current, that they would also go back to older music and show tunes, and basically would change it up in every episode. Sometimes they'd have theme episodes, and other times they wouldn't. Glee would go on to get some Emmy nominations, but they didn't win a lot. They did win a couple Golden Globes, including Best Show and Best Supporting Actress for Jane Lynch and Best Supporting Actor for Chris Colfer. It won several other acting awards for some of their guests. They had many guests on there and featured music from everything from the Beatles to Michael Jackson to Rihanna to just a little bit of everything. Now, there were some artists that were dead set against them using their music, and but most people were okay with it just because it usually helped peak their sales. Example, the song Don't Stop Believing, which became one of their signature numbers, not only was a big hit for the cast of Glee, but it put Journey's song back in the sales chart again. And that song went on to become like a big hit again, thanks to Glee. The show was also picked to be the show to end the Super Bowl in 2011. That's usually a big honor, what show comes on right after the Super Bowl. And Fox decided they would try Glee, and it proved to be very successful. Of course, the ratings started to falter. But the show continued to be a success musically because they would release songs that aired on that episode on iTunes, and they would digitally sell like crazy. In fact, they'd have multiple songs in the top 100, and then they would release albums from them. And just a crazy amount of sales worldwide. They claim at the end of its run 36 million digital single sales and 11 million album sales worldwide. That's what Glee was all about. Of course, one of its more tragic things was the death of Corey Monteith, who died in the middle of one of its seasons, and a lot of people thought that put a real damper on the show because he was kind of the jock that became the singer, but he usually was the inspiration for everyone else, and it really didn't, I don't know, it put a real damper on the show, and ratings continued to drop. It also had a movie in theaters, the 3D concert movie, and I will be bold enough to say that me and Corta sat there and watched it in 3D, and I thought it was a great movie, actually. The performances were awesome, and the little stories about people inspired by them were just amazing. It recently came to an end just last month, March 20th, 2015. The ratings peaked a little bit with its finale, but all were ready to move on, and they definitely, a lot of them will move on to bigger and better things. Now, as I said, Glee didn't get the ratings. Like, they got good ratings, but they didn't get the ratings of some of these other shows. But while these other shows, I think, will become pop culture, in our timelines, they'll be pop culture references forever. I think Glee actually did more for movies, not for movies, for music and the industry, and I'd like to explain my point of view on why I think so. First, we'll start with the music. As I mentioned, they sold a lot of digital and albums, but it's more than that. They introduced people to a lot of music. Now, I know a lot of people cringe when they hear a Glee version of a song, but they actually had some really great great versions. I really like their Don't Stop Believing. I also, Chris Colfer's mellow version of the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand, just heartbreaking. Again, from Willy Wonka, they did Pure Imagination for a funeral episode, was just absolutely magical. Anyhow, some of their songs weren't always the best versions, but they did have a lot that stayed fairly true to it. And they also kind of introduced mashups to the world, which are now everywhere on YouTube. But the music, what I liked about it was, people always hated that, these young people listening to the Glee albums this is the versions they're going to know these songs for. But you know what? I'll be honest with you. When I grew up with the Muppets. And I learned a lot of Beatles, Elton John songs and John Denver stuff from the Muppets. And when I got older, I'd hear the original version and I would love that even more. And I'd even seek out other songs by these artists. So I'm thinking that a lot of kids that may have only been listening to the Top 40 radio got access to not only classic tunes, classic rock, classic pop, they were also introduced to disco, and they were introduced to Broadway, and it opened up their eyes to all this stuff. And even though they listened to the Glee version, they probably went on to learn more about those songs and listen to the originals, and found other songs that they would love from them. At least I can only hope. And to me, that's just such a powerful thing, because as I said, 728 musical performances. That is an amazing amount of music. And I think it just introduced kids and people who watch that show to stuff they might not be taken to. And it's not just kids. Older people who watch that show were introduced to current top 40 music that probably wasn't necessarily played on stations they listen to. So that's a powerful thing. Another thing that I was always impressed with was that Glee cast a lot of Broadway actors and performers. They didn't just stick to, new cast members and stuff. They went, Leah Michele and Jonathan Groff and Matthew Morrison, Darren Criss. These are people they actually found on Broadway. Christian Chenoweth, it goes on and on and on. Yes, they found other people from all walks of life, but they used Broadway performers. And up till this point, Broadway performers never got a chance on television as much. You get someone like Mandy Patinkin or Patti LuPone who did some TV, but there's so many incredible, amazing performers that never got that exposure. So now we have performers from Broadway that did a stint on Glee, then they go back to Broadway, and just imagine how many tickets those people sell. Even if they go, I want to see my favorite Glee characters, it opens up a world for them that I think is absolutely amazing. And I think the fact that they were daring enough to cast Broadway performers that are equally talented, but just don't always get the respect they deserve. They got the respect they deserve because they proved to not only be good performers, but they could act too. Because Glee always talked about social awareness and dealt with, social things, and not always heavy-handedly too. It dealt it in a realistic way. It dealt with bullying and gay and transgender and just death of people of their own age or parents or stuff. I remember when one of the fathers of Kurt, he had a heart attack in one episode. I think it was one of the best episodes I had ever seen because it dealt with different kinds of religions. Because, people were saying, we're sending our prayers, we're sending that, and he wasn't sure what he believed. And they did a whole episode basically talking about all the different faiths and how people deal with them through music and song and story. And I thought it was just amazing. I think it was I want to say the episode's called Grilled Jesus or something, but definitely one to seek out, and it was just great. Speaking on that terms, that's another thing that I think Glee changed the face of. Glee, people always talk about, how white shows were. You turn the TV on and you don't see a lot of black actors. You see a little bit more nowadays, but they're usually in small things. Glee showed all types. They showed Latina, they showed Latino, they showed gay, straight, transgender, they showed Asian, they showed overweight, they showed kids with Down syndrome. And what I loved about it was they didn't just put them out there as, hey, look, I have Down syndrome, look at me. Some of these characters weren't perfect. Sue, played by Jane Lynch, her right-hand partner in crime was this Down syndrome girl who would do downright evil stuff. They always played the characters as real humans, and that was incredible. Except for I'm forgetting his name. The guy in the Artie, who was in the wheelchair. He's an actor who can walk, and I think the handicap community were a little saddened that they did that. But besides that, after that, they started casting with real people in mind. So kids could actually turn on the screen and see an overweight person singing and dancing and showing themselves sexually. Black, Asian, and these characters were real people. They weren't just stereotypes. They had flaws. They weren't just, I'm perfect in every way. And I think Glee kind of changed the face of that. You see it on shows like Grey's Anatomy and lots of other places now where you just see characters being characters. And it's not just like, this is the ethnic character. It's just an amazing, amazing thing. And I think that's a very positive thing. I think the greatest social aspect, though, Glee has is on its fans. And the reason why is because Glee, for those of you who never know much about the show, it was basically about a bunch of kids that didn't feel like they had a place, that joined Glee Club and were bullied and traumatized for it, but were desperately to find themselves and their family, which is, I think, something majority of kids can deal with, relate to. And Glee kind of made it okay to be a freak. It kind of changed the description of what a freak is and said, you know what? Embrace your inner freak, because we're all kind of freaks inside. I don't care if you're popular, if you're not popular. We all have insecurities and stuff. And I think Glee kind of opened that up. They also made it cool to join, like, musicals and plays and singing groups, dancing groups. When I grew up, nobody wanted to be, oh, you're not going to be in the play, are you? It's horrible, but yeah, when I grew up in the 80s, you were kind of outcasted for being in plays. Now, it almost seems cool when people know, Broadway stuff, and they want to be, I want to be a singer, I want to be a dancer, I'm going to just let it all hang out. Before, people didn't really know a lot about Broadway and musicals and stuff, and now even rare little musicals are brought to the forefront because people go and look on YouTube and find them and, go see them in community theaters, and they took the stigma away from that. So I think the fact that this show not only opened people up and got them to come out of themselves, but the fact that they made it okay to have that creative side, that you don't have to just be a jock or a cheerleader to be good. You could have a creative side. You could go into the singing group or dancing group. But the thing I loved about it, too, was it also embraced if you were a jock or a cheerleader. It was trying to say we're all dealing with the same stuff. And I think that is going to transcend anything. I think the fact that that's inspired so many people to lead a path of their creative sides, or just to feel free to hit the dance floor. even if you don't want to make it your profession, but don't be afraid to sing and dance out loud. To me, that is a bigger social impact than any of the other top-rated shows currently on right now will have. Yeah, a lot of people hear the word Glee and just say, oh, that crap. But you know what? If you invested in it and found out how many lives, that's why I love the 3D movie, because they talk to people who really identified with these characters, and it changed their life, because every week they could turn on the TV and say, that's me. And if you don't think that's a social impact, well, you should really think about it, because I think anything that changes a person for the good and sends them into a direction that they may not have found before, that is what I call a powerful impact. And for that, I think Glee will be missed. But luckily, we have 121 repeats we can watch at any time. And if you've never checked out the show, I definitely think it's worth looking into. It was a magical show for me. It had its ups and downs, but you know what? It always entertained me, and it will last for a long, long time. Not only just the series itself, but for all the greatness that it gave to the world in the hearts of its fans and the people it touched. Anyhow, we're going to talk about some board games coming up next, because they're coming back in style, though I personally don't know if they ever really left. And I can't wait to talk about some of my favorite classic board games, and we're going to do that right after this little break. Welcome back. Devlin Bishop here with you, and getting ready for another topic here on my pirate radio show. And I'm going to be talking about board games. They've sort of made a comeback, although I personally don't know if they've ever left. I think board games are always around, but they seem to go through phases. And seems to be a new phase where people are starting to go back to getting together with board games. And, you know, there's a couple of new shops. I know here in Hamilton we have, I think it's Gameopolis that we have here, and there's a couple of other ones in other cities and stuff opening up where people actually go into a cafe and play board games for a while, and they have board games of all different kinds. They just collect as many as they can. And I have always loved board games. I not only love the actual game, but I love the social aspect of it. And I think whenever we get to a point in life where things just get crazy and we're on social media, and we're caught up in video games so much, I think that's when board games suddenly resurface. And now, you know, I've noticed younger people trying to collect some of the classic board games, and, you know, some, you know, that have spent time at like Gameopolis and some of these other places, and that makes me happy, because, you know, I think it's a great thing to just sit around with a group of friends, laugh, joke. Now, I'm not anti-video game, and I think there was a time that video games were very social. I actually think, I remember when we used to play when we were younger, and, you know, you'd only have one or two controllers, so basically you'd have to wait your turn. So you'd kind of watch the other person play, or you'd talk while it was happening. But now I think everybody's got their own social, you know, they've got their own, you know, I know they're not called joysticks, controllers, that's what the word I'm looking for. And, you know, people like play on with their headphones, and they play with people online. I'm not saying that's social at all, but I think once everybody's doing their own different thing, like they're fighting, they're kind of working together. Yes, they're social, but I just think it's not as social as just sitting down and, you know, you can have some talks in between things. You know, when you're trying to kill, you know, soldiers or zombies or something in these video games, you're concentrating a lot on them. But with board games, you can sit back and have a laugh every once in a while. So I'm kind of glad there is a resurgence. And I just kind of wanted to yak about some of my personal favorite classic board games. Now, there's a lot of new, very good ones out there. And, you know, maybe in the future I'll talk about them. But I'm going to stick with what I think is the true classics that come to mind. We'll start with the granddaddy of them all, Monopoly. Yes, this is a game that can get boring, but I think it gets boring if you play it a lot in like a short amount of time. Like if you go on a Monopoly kick in for like 1 month, you play it every night or every 2 nights or whatever, Monopoly can get really boring. But I think if Monopoly's taken out once in a blue moon and played, it's still a fun game. You know, it's just such a natural game because you're just buying stuff and you're collecting and you're, wheeling and dealing, and, the feel of that, fake money when you're like, got it in your hand. I don't know, there's something about it. You almost become like a tyrant or something, like, oh, I'm going to win this. I'm going to put hotels on there. I honestly wasn't very good at Monopoly, but I still enjoyed playing it. And as I said, I think if you play it, because sometimes you go into a run of, I want to play Monopoly, and by the end of it you just say, I never want to see that top hat and little dog again. And if I even hear the word community chest, I'm going to go in a rage. But I think if it's a game, if you play in every once in a while, I think it still holds up. I know there's a lot of different kinds of Monopolies now, which I just think are silly, I think you see like, Elvis Monopoly, you see like Simpsons Monopoly, just all these different kinds. I think the weirdest one I saw was Horse Monopoly. I'm not sure what you do. Like, I could see going around, you're buying horses, but I don't know how you're putting houses or stables or hotels in them. I'm not sure how that works, but I don't know. I'm personally fine with old-fashioned Monopoly in my eyes. But you know what? There is some good computer ones out there that take away the money. Now, I personally like the feel of the Monopoly money. But there are ones that you have kind of like a credit card, debit card that keeps all that in the computer, and you can play it. So if, your baby just don't think, or maybe you just have somebody you don't trust to be the banker, maybe you should go the electronic way. But personally, I think old Monopoly still works best. Clue. This is a fun game. Now, there was an older game called Stop Thief that didn't get the love that it should have. It was an electronic game, and it was about trying to catch a crook. And if you get a chance, look it up. I'm sure they've got stuff on YouTube. I thought it was an amazing game. But Clue is still classic. Your classic characters like Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard and, all the characters that you remember, know, and love. And it's just simple, because it's like a murder mystery and you're walking around the houses and trying to find clues. And I still think the reason it's classic is because it's just so beautifully set up. And no surprise. And I'll be, if anybody is shocked by hearing this, I love playing Miss Scarlet. I don't know if it's my gay sense or just because she's the sexiest one in the game, but I really hated when I was lumped with, Mr. Green or something like that. If you sit down and play with me, I will beg you to be Miss Scarlet just because that's just me. It's just me, okay? I live my life by Miss Scarlet, whatever that means. And must I give a shout out to the awesome movie, probably one of the best movies made from a board game, Clue, with Tim Curry and a ton of great people. But anyhow, that's a whole different topic, and I could talk about that for a long time. Anyhow, another one of my all-time favorite is The Game of Life. Oh my God, I remember playing this as a kid, and hey, I haven't played it in a long time, but I'd love to play it again, and being unemployed, I'm going to have a lot of time, so anybody who wants to come over and play some games. The Game of Life was one of my favorites. I loved that little car that went around, and you spun the wheel. I think the wheel was always one of my favorites. And you'd go around and get jobs, and it was always fun to see how many kids you had. Some people would be pretty much barren, and then other people would just have the car was just stacked full of kids, and it was just fun to see. And I always like in life, you either wind up at the rich place or the poor place. It was basically all the aspects of life There was a new Hollywood version that I would love to play sometime, but I haven't. But I love the original Life because it just kind of I love that life could be put totally into a board game. And it worked. Because for many people, this is the divine order that they follow life in. Sure, there's probably some stuff it doesn't deal with, but a lot of people map their life like that. And as many people right now that are probably disagreeing with that statement, think about that. You know, you go to school, you go to college, you get married, you get a profession, you have kids, then you die, and whether you're rich or poor. I'm sorry to say it, but a lot of people live their lives this way. Me, it would have to be a little bit more fabulous, of course. But I still love the game. Now, I was not a big fan of Operation, but I have to put it here because it is a classic game. But for me, what a horrible game to play as a kid, because you're literally getting shocked. And, you know, yes, it's not like it's hooked up to a car battery system where, though I thought it might be kind of fun to play like that Jackass version where you up the amp a bit. But to be honest with you, this game made me paranoid. And as a kid, we have so much to deal with. I think the last thing we need is more paranoia in our life. But I have to put it because it is a classic game. And I remember always having to get that damn pencil. That pencil in the Funny Bone or whatever it was so hard to get. Like, it was just literally, I would be shaking as a kid. Not ever sure why I even played this game, because I never enjoyed it, because I always was, even though it was just a little shock, it would freak me out, because this was a game that, built my paranoia. Actually, there's another board game I used to love, based on the movie Jaws. So the game itself was called Jaws. What a clever thing. And I love this because it has the same paranoia, but without the fear of electrical shock. And basically you would take garbage out of Jaws' mouth with this little hook. And then eventually, if it got too light, Jaws would snap up. And, as a kid, I'd jump back and freak. And I think that's more fun. I think a shark biting at you rather than, operating on a human body and, bzz, bzz, to me. But you know what? Still a lot of fun. I don't drink a lot, but I'm sure it's a fun game when you're drunk. I'm sure adults have tried to play it because there's probably shocking all over the place. For the smart-minded people, a Trivial Pursuit always stays a classic. It was a Canadian-made game, and I'm glad to see that it still holds up. I still think the original game is the best, but I know they have everything from Canadian trivia to sports trivia to movie trivia. I think there's a couple of DVD versions even, but I think the original is still best. I think any game that tests your skills, but I think they took a lot of time with these questions. A lot of trivia question games now, I don't know, they just seem so willy-nilly and random, but I still think the original Trivial Pursuit just has some solid questions. And definitely if you have it, build that pie, get those pieces. Not particularly great at this game. I have my moments. Yes, I go more for entertainment and human, whatever that one's called, the literature, arts and literature. But, you could luck out on some geography, history, and sports questions, which I need to luck out on. But, it can make you smart, too, because, sometimes you'll be like, how did I know that answer? But you did, and, it makes you feel good after a while. Trouble, that classic game where you pop the pop-o-matic dice. Again, I think I like this more for popping the dice, because it'd have that dome that went... Okay, that's a horrible rendition of it. But basically, you'd hit it, and then you'd move your pieces around. I think it's loosely based on... No, I don't think... I was going to say, I think it's loosely based on Chinese checkers, but I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about on that one. But anyhow, Trouble's still a classic game. Scrabble, just absolutely... I think this game will stick around for years. And again, they have updated it in many ways, but just the classic Scrabble. It's open to so many things because you're basically... The only thing that limits you is your mind. And if you play with different people. Like this can take on so many things. The games can be quick. They can be inventive. It's just, I think it'll always be around just because it's just a phenomenal game. And it's one that you can just easily bring out and, people get excited about it. Maybe not some people, but this game, the only thing that I think could be a problem with this game is that now that the younger generation doesn't seem to have to be interested in spelling, like it's not even on the school curriculum anymore, and spelling doesn't even seem to count for anything anymore, I think that could be Scrabble's only problem in the future. Because it would be horrible to play Scrabble with somebody who couldn't spell and they were putting stuff down that was anything. So, yeah, although I think Scrabble should be a good game, I think there could be some trouble for it in the future. Battleship was never one of my favorite games, but I did play it. I did like the strategy of it. It's quite simple. I shouldn't say I don't like it. It can be a lot of fun, But, it wouldn't be the first one I grabbed for. But you know what? I do appreciate its strategy. And, where you had to place the boats. And, I'm going to be clever. I'm going to put one on the side, But honestly, I remember you do get that kind of heightened feeling when you realize, look, I got another one, and another one. I know where his ship is. And when you find out it's one of his destroyers or the other person's destroyers, how there is a bit of a rush. Okay, I don't have much of a life, so games do give me a rush. This isn't considered a classic game, but I'm going to put it in there because it is still around. You can still buy it, and it should be Kerplunk. Yes, I said it, Kerplunk. It's the one with the sticks and the plastic thing, and then you pour the marbles in. And then you slowly pull out the little rods, and then you try not to drop as many dice, and then you hit the wrong one, and all the dice go. And I think this eventually got replaced by Jenga. I honestly have never played Jenga in my life. And I think that the excitement of Jenga kind of took away Kerplunk's thunder. I'm glad you can still buy Kerplunk, and I strongly recommend it. But yeah, I think Jenga is just visually more stunning. You're building like a tower where all you really have is sticks and some marbles on it. But I think it's kind of a precursor to Jenga, so I think once you start building stuff, I don't think Kerplunk has a chance. But you know what? It'd be fun to crank out every once in a while. And while we're talking about classic board games, if you're in the mood to do something really crazy, why don't you get some friends together and dust off the old Dungeons and Dragons or Battletech or any of your old, dice rolling things. I think it'd be fun to play later in life. Now, I role play, but it's a storytelling kind of role play. But I know these, I bet you a couple of you listening right now probably has a stack of these rule books and manuals and the Games Master's manuals. And, why not dust them off and, have a weekend or something and, just have a couple of hours for friends and just relive the days of building warriors and thieves and elves and stuff. Or, whatever role-playing game you used to play. I think it'd be a lot of fun and, it might be good nostalgia because I think these game places build on nostalgia. Now, when I see them, I see a lot of young people going in and, they might have nostalgia just from their youth, but us really old people have a lot of nostalgia. So, you don't have to just go out to a game thing. I bet if you talk to a lot of people, they would love to get together and sit for game night, get some snacks out, just have yourself a good time. And hey, if you are a video game thing and you want to do that, that's great too. And most of these are on video. So if you don't want to crank out the whole board game, you can play the Game of Life and Clue on video. I don't believe Kerplunk. Kerplunk is just not loved. I tell you, why not Kerplunk the video game? You just pull those sticks. Okay, Kerplunk doesn't translate, but you know what? I'm going to get a copy of this game, and I'm playing it because I know it's fun. Maybe I'm going to start a Kerplunk Uprising. Just saying the name Kerplunk makes me so happy. So happy. So anyhow, if you got some free time, like I'm going to have a lot of it in the days ahead, weeks ahead, hopefully not months ahead, but you know what? Have a good old-fashioned game playing night, and let me know what your favorite board games are, because I know I've missed a lot, but I want to hear from you too. And just, drop me a line, even if you want to email me or comment in this. Let me know what you like to do. And while you're doing that, tell me how I'm doing on the show, or what stuff you would like to hear me talk about, because I am up to the challenge. Anyhow, I'm going to go see if I can find Kerplunk, and I will talk to you very, very soon.